Welcome to Vote Pro Podcast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com.
The DEA announces yet again that it will begin approving applications for cannabis growers to cultivate for research.
Big news!
A major pharmacy chain is going to add cannabis to its patient recommendations. And we have another cannabis in sports update, this one from Florida. Hello, folks, and welcome once again to Vote Pro Podcast. We are so glad to have you with us. I'm Phil Adams, and you know my colleague here, Jay...
You've only known me for 60 years.
I knew it was something like that.
Couldn't pull that one up, huh? How are you, Philip?
I'm doing all right, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm doing all right.
Summer's here.
Summer, man.
I was like,
now, are you getting those? Are you getting those locusts, the cicadas?
No, I haven't seen one yet. I have not seen one.
Wow, they're starting to come out in droves yet. They're not as noisy yet.
That's because they're still tender and moist. Perfect with a little butter and garlic. Yummy. No, they harden up. I think their shells like.
No, actually, if you had to. Supposedly, you could eat them and
pure
survive
protein,
on them.
Man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll have a hamburger, hot dog.
Yeah. So that's what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Not sure what that has to do with weed, but that's all right.
Well, I suppose you could smoke one, and but I don't recommend that. And I'm sure the major pharmacy chain doesn't recommend that either.
Yeah.
But so what else is going on, man?
Not a lot. I want to say something that you probably don't want me to say, but I gotta say, our friend and my colleague here, Phil Adams, as you may have heard us discuss before, is an author. He's a novelist. Sorry. He's a writer, which is what he does for a living, is write. But he's got a book, which you may have heard of, called Blood of the Summoned. And now,
what's it called again?
Blood of the Summoned. You want me to say it one more time?
No.
Can you sign my book, by the way? No, the reason I'm bringing it up is because I listened to the first episode. He's got it out now as a podcast. Right, Philip?
Yes, I do. I produced it in podcast form,
and it's amazing. Now he wrote all the music for it. It's got beds of music behind. He did a lot of the acting, the voiceover, the narration, and hired a couple of women actors, as I understand it, to do some. One to do the female.
She did all of them. Yeah,
it's really great. First of all, I really enjoyed the book. I can see your head growing as I talk about this. No, all kidding aside, it is really a lot of fun.
Gonna snap my headphones in.
He describes it as a paranormal historical thriller that puts the evil in medieval. And I think that's a great description. So say something real quick about it, Phil, and I'll leave you alone.
All right. Well, it's basically about evil creatures back in the time of the Anglo-Saxon in England. It's at the end of the Anglo-Saxon era, and it mixes dark creatures with actual historical figures. So the idea is that you would really not be sure what's real and what's fiction, and it's kind of creepy, it's kind of dark, and
it's a lot of fun. I mean,
it's really a lot of fun. It's the same period in history that inspired like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, with the pointy helmets and Waddle and Daub homes and stuff like that. And if you like that sort of stuff, it's a little bit more on the mature side, closer than more like Game of Thrones in that regard than like Lord of the Rings, which is a little more family. This is
definitely not family.
Definitely not family
fare.
But
it's first chapter on. But it's a great story. Really a lot of fun. I recommend it. And, I'll put a link in the show notes, and he's not one to promote his own stuff, but so I didn't tell him I was going to do this. But I really think it's fun. I think a lot of you guys and women would enjoy it. So check it out. Where can they find it, by the way? It's on Spotify.
Well, it's on Spotify. It's on Stitcher, on Google, iHeartRadio, pretty much everywhere except Apple Podcasts, because Apple apparently is going through some platform issues lately, and I think that's just kind of a trending issue. That once they work out, it'll be there as well.
Yeah, right now I've been reading about a lot of new podcasters having trouble getting their podcast up on Apple.
Yeah.
They're reformatting all their podcast page or whatever it is. And
so once they work out all that technical crap, I'll have it up there as well. But
so it's on Amazon. It's on
Amazon,
Stitcher, all the places you get
Deezer,
your podcast.
yeah,
everything except Apple. So anyway, check it out. What else is happening, brother?
Well, let's see. You know, we've been hearing the same. You know how, like, when for the last 6 months, Chuck Schumer's been saying that a new legalization bill is coming soon,
any day now,
very soon, shortly.
On the horizon.
And you know, months and months go by and we still haven't seen it. Well, all right, that's fine. That's months. This is something that's been going on for years. Back in let's just start with the headline here. And the headline is that the Drug Enforcement Administration has announced once again that it will begin approving applications for cannabis growers to become federally authorized to cultivate marijuana for research. Now, for those, and we've covered this in the past, currently the University of Mississippi is the only legal source for cannabis for federal research.
And has been for years.
For 50 years.
Why?
For 50 years.
Why them? Does anybody know?
Well, there is an explanation. It's, I don't know, a little legalistic and a little lame, if you ask me. But the reason is that back in 1961, the United States became signatories to a trade deal that it's called the Single Convention of 1961, and it says that the National Institute on Drug Abuse regulates the sole legal grower, is also, which it demands that only one government agency oversee the entire process.
I see.
So the National Institute on Drug Abuse is not overseen by the DEA. So they're two different bodies, and that is in conflict with the convention. Now the thing is, other countries, Canada, and I think Uruguay is the only other country that is completely legalized.
Right.
They have, they're not coming out. They're not leaving the Single Convention treaty, but they've already indicated they're not going to abide by that particular aspect of it.
So it's actually a treaty. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it is. It's a trade agreement.
It creates a monopoly, or it has for 50 years for the University of Mississippi, right? I mean,
that's right.
That's crazy.
It's known the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs of 1961. It's an international treaty. It was signed by, I don't know.
Yeah, whoever.
200 nations, 180 nations.
Right.
And it regulates how the countries can handle production for research. So basically it demands that the government have a monopoly on cannabis research. And only one agency within the government can have that monopoly. And, we agreed to it. And that's why the DEA is saying, you can't. But here's the thing. Back in 2016, and this was at the end of the Obama administration, the DEA said it was going to start accepting applications for new institutions, companies and research institutions and universities to allow them to grow marijuana for research. And like 33 institutions applied, and 3 years later, not a single response to the application came from the DEA.
Yeah, they just been sitting on it,
right now. And back in 2019, we reported on this that an institute out of Phoenix, Arizona, called the Scottsdale Research Institute, filed a lawsuit against the Justice Department demanding a response from the agency. They didn't get any. Then in August of 2019, they said they're going to start reviewing the application. So first they said they're going to start accepting the applications. Then they said they're going to start reviewing the applications. And 8 months later, nothing happens. The Scottsdale Research Institute files a second lawsuit, this time in 2020. And this time they demand that under the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA Act, the public has a right to know
what's
why
going
these
on.
applications are not processed.
Right.
So all the parties to this settlement there was reached on Tuesday agreed to release a memo. So,
Does it sound like the government or what?
your tax dollars at work.
It took us 50 years to put a memo out that says we're going to release a memo.
It basically saying that, okay, we started accepting, then we started reviewing, now we're going to start approving.
Well, that's baby steps, baby. Baby steps.
Yeah, but after 5 years,
yeah, it was under the end of the Obama administration.
That should have happened in like a few weeks.
Yeah.
But so there's the DEA moving forward once again and at a snail's pace. So
well, at least it's moving in the right direction.
yeah, so it makes Chuck Schumer seem like
Roger
the Mach
Rabbit.
5 by comparison, right?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, so how soon? Any indication on how soon they would be approving some of these applications and where they might be? The applications, yeah,
Soon.
okay, sounds familiar.
And they didn't indicate how many would be approved, but they said that officials expect
Soon,
more to be approved
very soon.
soon. So
All
there's
right.
talk about being non-committal. Listen, I want to mention also that this episode of Vote Pro Podcast is being sponsored once again by our good friends over at cannabis.net. And by our good friends, I mean Kurt Dalton.
Yes.
Who is awesome. And really, you guys, if you haven't gone on to cannabis.net, check it out. There's all kinds of good content.
Yeah, it's not just news stories. Yeah, they have all kinds of stuff on there. Like they have ratings on different strains of weed, and
Right.
there's like a social media aspect to it. It's a fantastic website, cannabis.net. Check it
Yeah,
out.
there are a number of sites that, I don't know about you, but for me, they really have the information. Like when it comes to investing, Motley Fool does more about cannabis than any of the others.
absolutely. Right.
When it comes to legislation and stuff like that, Marijuana Moment is a great resource.
Yeah.
MJ Biz Daily is another one, but cannabis.net for just a wide range of excellent cannabis related content. You got to check it out.
And the articles are great. They're funny. They're informative. It's good stuff. Speaking of stocks, True Leaf, one of my stocks that I bought a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
is absolutely kicking my ass. I mean, in a good way.
Oh, in a good way. Okay.
Yeah, it is through the roof, baby. So,
All right.
right on cannabis.
So it's up to
stocks.
$1.50.
Yeah, no, it is really cranked.
Oh, okay.
It's up like 100% in a year or something. I don't know. I don't have the chart in front of me, but anyway, thank God I invested that $45 in it because now I have $90. I'm just kicking ass.
Well, that's good. Now, make sure you read your prospectus and invest wisely.
Exactly. Hey, I got a little sports update for you, brother. We always
Really?
we like to cover the sports stuff, right?
Yeah. Now, I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, Jay, but I'm a homer.
Yeah, me too.
I root for the local teams, especially the Nationals and the Capitals. And
In the Washington football team.
not so much.
No, I do.
And they get a decent name, maybe I'll start. Football. Anyway,
What's up with our Caps?
well, they're in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I know. I've been watching
For
them,
the
but-
seventh straight year. They are up against the Boston Bruins, who is a fantastically good team. And there have been 3 games, Jay. And all of them have been decided in overtime. Last night was decided in double overtime. So 4 overtime periods in 3 games.
3 games, yeah.
Are these 2 teams matched up or what?
It's crazy. I
They
wonder.
are so close.
I wonder if that's like any kind of record for hockey playoffs. That many overtimes in.
The fact is that I think there is a record for how many consecutive playoff games between 2 teams were decided by 1 goal, and it's the Caps and the Bruins.
No
and it's
kidding.
like 11, going back to like the 90s or something like
Right.
that.
I was flipping back and forth between them and the Nats last night, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It was a good time. Yeah,
Unfortunately, the Caps lost in double overtime. Someone had to lose that game.
Yeah.
But they're down 2-1, but we got another game coming up soon. So
come on, Caps. All right, here's my story. This one is, we've covered hockey in terms of cannabis. We've covered NFL, we've covered baseball, professional baseball, we've covered basketball. This is a little different. This is a story out of Florida. And this is something I got off ganjapreneur.com, and this is by Graham Abbott. And the title of this story is Florida Ends Cannabis Testing for Boxers and MMA Fighters. Florida will no longer drug test pro boxers and MMA fighters for cannabis use following a recent Florida Boxing Commission rule change.
Nice.
The Florida Boxing Commission voted on Tuesday last week the end of the practice of drug screening professional boxers and MMA fighters for cannabis use, according to ESPN.com.
So a little love for the combat sports.
Right.
Gotta love it.
Which I don't watch. I just can't watch people beating the shit out of each other. It's not interesting to me.
I like boxing.
Boxing's fine, but that MMA
I haven't
stuff,
really gotten into MMA quite as much, but
I know a lot of people love it. But
I've been a big fan of boxing all my life. So,
according to Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation spokesperson Patrick Farragazan, the commission's vote was based on recommendations by the Association of Boxing Commissioners, their Medical Advisory Committee, and the United Fighting Championships anti-doping policy set by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency. Previously, a fighter's positive drug test for THC, even in trace amounts, was cause for a fine, a suspension, and even overturning of a competitor's victory.
Wow.
So Florida rule change took effect immediately following Tuesday's vote, but only affects in-state boxing and MMA matches. The shift aligns Florida with the UFC, which announced in January that it has removed THC from its list of banned substances, except in cases where an athlete uses it intentionally for performance-enhancing purposes. Now, I don't know how cannabis can be classified as a performance enhancer.
In a fighting sport?
In any sport.
Well, especially in a combat sport, I would think that would be the last thing I want to have going into the ring against someone who's trying to take my head off.
Start looking at the guy eating a big slice of pizza in the front row.
Hey, ref, nice outfit.
That looks delicious.
No, I don't know. Well, I think that's great. And Roger Goodell, if you're listening.
Yeah, really. Well, it says here at the end of the story, other major sports leagues have also adjusted their rules for cannabis use. The NBA announced in December it would no longer test players for cannabis. The NFL's latest collective bargaining agreement we talked about a couple weeks ago, announced in May, removed the threat of league suspension for players who test positive for cannabis. And the MLB announced last March that players are allowed to use cannabis in their personal lives, but cannot partner with or accept sponsorships from cannabis companies. So, we're moving forward in really all the professional sports with regard to cannabis. If it's a slow, baby step thing, that's fine. But we're moving in the right direction, and that's great. In the Senate, at least, two of the best friends that the cannabis industry has are Democrat Ron Wyden of Oregon and Republican Rand Paul of Kentucky. Yeah, libertarian.
These two guys are stepping up, and they're really trying to get some stuff done. For example, first of all, Ron Wyden. Now, he is the Senate Finance Committee chairman and has been since Democrats took control of the Senate in January. And he believes, first of all, that the cannabis industry, once cannabis is federally legalized, should be represented by U.S. trade officials. I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
We should have, once cannabis industry is normalized, trade discussions should be conducted by U.S. trade officials. It shouldn't be, persona non grata.
Hello, McFly. Yeah.
Anybody else? He also supports, and he's very adamant, he says, now this was in comments at an event sponsored by the National Cannabis Roundtable and our friends at Leafly. another great resource, where he said he is in support of reforming that portion of the tax code, which we've talked about, called Section 280E.
Right.
And 280E prohibits state legal cannabis businesses from basically claiming the same business tax deductions and tax credits
that everybody else
that are
gets.
available to every other industry.
Right.
All right. So he says, I think 280E needs to go, and I'm determined to get that done.
Right on, brother.
I'm with you, Ron. On another front, he is also joining with two of his Senate colleagues, not just Rand Paul, but the junior senator from Oregon, Jeff Merkley, who I'm sure is also a Democrat, but yes, he is.
That's what that little D means next to his name, just in case you're wondering.
All right. To bring consumable CBD products out from what Wyden calls, quote, a regulatory gray zone. So basically what's going on here is the Food and Drug Administration is continuing to slow walk regulations on CBD. Now, the Farm Bill made CBD and other hemp derivatives legal in 2018. And since then, we've been waiting for the FDA to issue guidance regulating the marketing of consumable hemp derivatives, including CBD, but not just CBD. And they've just been dragging their feet. And Wyden says, F this, we're going to introduce what he calls, or what they've called, the Hemp Access and Consumer Safety Act, which would basically exempt hemp, cannabidiol, which is CBD, and other substances containing hemp-derived ingredients from certain restrictions that have been blocking the marketing of these legal hemp products. So more power to you, Ron and Rand.
Yeah, man.
So, and Jeff Merkley, you know.
And others, but yeah.
But those two guys in particular are on it. Chuck Schumer says he's on it. Cory Booker says he's on it. We will see. But, you know.
That progress, man. It's just, who would have thought, you know, we've been doing Vote Pro Podcast for 3 years. Yes. Vote Pro Pot has been around since 2014.
That's right.
So we're about to celebrate our third year of doing the podcast in June next month.
Right.
But the stories we're doing now, Phil, think about them in comparison to the stories we were doing 3 years ago on the podcast. When we started, I mean, the legislation that we talk about, not only how impactful the legislation is, but how much of it there is, the quantity of it. That's when we were doing this 3 years ago, it was like, oh, God, here's a story. You know, we don't even hardly do our state updates anymore because there's too many of them. There's something every day.
They're dropping like flies. Alabama governor I think has signed a medical bill.
Yeah. Alabama.
Alabama.
Wow, Roll Tide. That's something, man. So, yeah, it's just, you know, I just thought I'd throw that in there. The changes, and everybody who listens to us knows this because you're involved in it, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. Either you're in the industry or, you know, you're an advocate or whatever. So you see it, but it is pretty amazing. The progress that we've seen in cannabis legalization in the last 3 years. And
we've been talking about this the last few weeks. This is why the expectations are so high.
Right.
For a legalization bill. And there are folks who kind of in the know who are saying, you know, trying to tamp down the expectations a little bit, saying it's not the slam dunk that you may think it is, but it's just that the expectations have been so high.
Right.
Because the states have been moving at light speed.
Just rolling like a steamroller, man. I mean, what are we up to, 39? I mean, we've only got a handful of states that don't have some type of legality at this stage. So it's really, we're right there. Well, you know, you mentioned CBD, obviously doing that article. I have something here on CBD. We don't cover CBD a lot. I mean, let's face it, we typically are more oriented toward THC and the legalities of THC.
And the industry as a whole.
As a whole. But here's an article that caught my eye that I saw today. And I saw this on thehill.com. And this is an article about the pharmacy chain Rite Aid. And what it is Rite Aid has announced in a new offering that they're going to provide alternative medicines, and even they're considering cannabis remedies. And what that means is their CEO has announced that their pharmacists and the Rite Aids are being trained to help patients find alternative medicines for their ailments. So if they come in and say, I've got this problem or that problem, the doctor wants me to take, whatever, a steroid or something.
Yeah, or a muscle relaxer. I don't want to take those. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so Rite Aid pharmacists will now be able to help customers select alternative medicines. And included within that list are CBD products. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can't do THC because you got to, at least at this stage
still
of the
federally
game,
illegal.
Still, and you still got to go through a dispensary in states where it's legal. So it makes it difficult. But I think that's kind of interesting. In response to growing demand, CBD products and other alternative medicines will now be available at local Rite Aid pharmacies. So they're going to be carrying all these different products as the company watches the cannabis market for buying opportunities. Rite Aid CEO Hayward Donegan spoke at a virtual event called The Future of Everything Festival, saying that pharmacists are now trained to advise customers on homeopathic alternatives to over-the-counter prescription medicines. So maybe instead of taking aspirin or Tylenol, you recommend whatever. There's a whole list of options, lavender and melatonin and aromatherapies and those kind of things, elderberry and zinc, all these alternative medicines that have so far fewer side effects as a general rule. So it caught my eye. I think that's something interesting. Rite Aid's a pretty damn big company.
Yeah, it's a big company, and so that's puts a lot of kind of muscle behind it. And I think, if these products were not efficacious at some level,
right,
they would not be so popular. I mean, there are products that they're trying to hawk on late night TV,
right,
to make you younger and more virile and stuff like that.
Right.
They don't, everybody knows they don't work.
I can speak to the more virile ones. They're not working. So,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Don't bother, buddy. Don't bother. No,
well, I'm not in the market for that right now. But thanks. But CBD and some of these other homeopathic remedies, they're popular, and there are certain things that I've tried. Like I tried this stuff for joint pain, just and I asked my doctor if it works, and he was like, well, if you think it works, then it works.
What do you mean, a homeopathic treatment?
Yeah, what's this? There's this combination of drugs or supplements that I used to take for joint pain, and I don't know if it worked or not.
Yeah.
And when he says if you think it works, then it works, what he's saying is that no, it doesn't work. If it makes you feel better, it's basically a placebo.
Placebo. Well, I tell you, I'm a skeptic. I've always been a skeptic when it comes to this sort of homeopathic things until my friend Phil here, because I do have arthritis and joint pain. And you gave me a few years ago some salve, I guess that's a CBD-based salve that actually has a little THC in it.
Well, it's 1-to-1. Yeah.
It's 1-to-1. And I used it on an elbow, and damn if it didn't work. I mean, I'm not imagining it. It was not a placebo. I could sleep through the night without, and I still use it. I use it on my hands. I use it on my elbow. I have arthritis, and it's great. I mean, I swear by it. It works. I'm telling you. So, I don't know about lavender and all that other happy horse shit, but I'll give it a shot now. I mean, I being a skeptic, I'll give it a shot after trying the stuff you gave me, and it, you were like, try this, man. I'm telling you, because you have the same problem. You have the same.
Yeah, the joint pain and sleeping and I've let other people use that stuff, and they're like, wow, where can I get this? Can you get me some more? I say, well, no, I can't get it for you because I can only buy it for myself.
Well, I get it at my dispensary. It's great. You're the one that told me about it, though, and I got some, and it's fantastic. I mean, it does. Yeah,
there's a number of different brands, and they're all pretty good. Mm-hmm. But you get a 1-to-1 bomb. Yeah, it's called.
Yeah, that's right.
And it really does. You know.
Yeah, swear by it. I mean,
it's good stuff. We've been in touch with our good buddy Andrew lately, and we're hoping to hear from him very, very soon. He's feeling better.
Yes, he is.
And
turning
the corner, and doing well. We're anxious to get more good news from our buddy Drew and get him back on the podcast as soon as humanly possible. But in the meantime, we really do hope you're enjoying this little tete-a-tete between me and Jay. And if so, please do tell a friend about it, or two or three. Get others involved. Go on to Apple Podcast, and if you feel like it, just give us a 5-star rating. It helps. Although Apple Podcast is not my favorite organization in the world right now, but only because they're undergoing some technical issues, and I wish them well on that. And go to votepropot.com. Send us a message. We love to hear from you. Anything you have on your mind, questions, comments, corrections. We're not always right, and we don't pretend to be. So, tell us what's right. What else, Jay?
Well, send us an email if you would, because we'd like to hear what you think of the show and get ideas for segments, news you heard about. I've gotten some good ideas on stories from people who send us an email at podcast@votepropot.com. And I'd just like to mention again Phil's book, his book too, but you can get that on Amazon. But check out the podcast. I think a lot of folks would really enjoy it. It's like a dramatic series, right? Chapter by chapter.
Chapter by chapter.
And I think, are you releasing it in 3 seasons? Is that how you're going to do it? So
yes. And the first season is what's going up week by week, and it's 10 episodes in the first season, and I think I'm up to episode 8.
And you finished the whole thing. You're just releasing them,
just releasing them as I can. Yeah.
So it's Blood of the Summoned, Phil Adams, and you can find it where you get your podcasts.
Well, thank you for that, Jay.
Absolutely.
And as always, we want you to check out all the news that's going on in the world of cannabis. And we post a lot of it, actually, on our social media platforms. So just go take a look at Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Do a search for Vote Pro Pot.